Hi, I'm Taylor Smurl.
And I'm Tommy Smurl.
And this is
Neat.
All right, hello. Well, on the podcast this week, we talked about glassware.
Glassware.
Yeah, it's
Not underwear.
No, I mean,
How about glass underwear?
That sounds not comfortable. Weird take on the Cinderella story.
I have this glass underwear she left behind. I just have to see whose butt it fits.
As we got into on the podcast, glassware is not just designed for cocktails to look pretty or cool. There's a lot of functionality to its design, from the width of the opening, the stem or no stem, the length of the glass. All sorts of aspects go into why you pair a certain glass with a certain kind of cocktail. We are going to demonstrate 2 drinks in 2 specific vessels that are kind of tied into the drinks that go with them, I guess. The first of which is one of the most standard, like if you had, like a top 3 glasses you need for a functional bar, this is one of them, and that is the highball or the Collins glass. As we mentioned, I say highball or Collins glass as if that's interchangeable, and in practical use behind a bar, it is treated interchangeably, but historically, the Collins glass is a little bigger. So I think I technically have a highball glass because this is a 12-ounce glass, and a Collins glass is more up to 14. I think you have a proper Collins. It's a little bigger. Yeah. So, but the drink that goes in this is the Tom Collins. It kind of comes from a whole family of Collins-style drinks.
The Collinses were very particular in their glassware.
Well, because there's also so a Tom Collins is basically a gin sour topped with soda. But you can also make a John Collins where you take out the gin and you put in whiskey. There are a lot of these kind of sub-in, like you can make a tequila Collins. You can make, a mezcal Collins, I guess. Anything that follows that formula is sort of, you can put it in the Collins style of drinks. Which
you can
overlaps
Collins
with
anything.
Exactly. So we're going to go ahead and just throw some ice in our Collins glass to have it ready. So we're going to let's start with our citrus. We're going to do 3/4 ounce of lemon juice.
Okay.
A 3/4 ounce of simple syrup. As always, just a 1-to-1 sugar to water ratio. And then we're going to do 2 ounces of gin. I got this Death's Door gin. This is my first time having it, and I really am impressed with it. A lot of gins kind of make their mark by having a ton of botanicals, but this one is just juniper, coriander, and fennel, and it's kind of savory. I don't know, if you like more savory spirits, and I certainly do, or like aquavit, I really like this gin. I would recommend it.
I got mine from Dr. Bombay that used to be on Bewitched.
I don't think that's where that comes from.
You don't think so?
I have no idea, actually.
Okay.
But I would go ahead and assume that you made that up, because you do that sometimes.
Me?
Yeah. All right, load your shaker up with ice.
So then shake?
Yep. I can't ever keep the audio when we're shaking, but Dad was saying that he saw a video of a bartender having a one-handed shake explode on themselves, and I will say that is it's once you get like the pressure points, it's easy to not mess up, but if you do mess it up, it's a big old mess. So keep a 2-handed shake until you're real confident. There's nothing wrong with a 2-handed shake. Some bartenders would argue you should only shake with 2 hands, no matter how talented you are, you should always use 2 hands.
I will.
All right, and we're going to top it with some soda water.
Mine is from the good old US of A, Canada Dry. Well, might be from Canada then. I don't know. Is Canada dry? No, it's not.
No.
You get good beer from there.
They allow alcohol. They do have not weird. They have different drinking laws, and I know that their bartenders have to be stone sober. You can lose your job if you if you even have a shot behind the bar.
Oh. All right, now tell me this. After we pour it, do we just pour it on top and let it sit there, or do we stir it?
Well, I would say in most bars you're just gonna get it poured there, but I actually do like you're not stirring it. It's literally you put your spoon in, you give it a stir, and you pull it back up, and that's it. And you're just combining the viscosities because that soda water is it's gonna want to sit on top of your heavier ingredients.
Okay,
so
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you're not really stirring it. You're just kind of pushing it down and bringing it back up.
It's like one of those drinks you get sometimes at a bar that's not mixed right, where you're drinking it and you're saying, boy, they didn't put any alcohol in this. And you get to that last drink and it's like a shot.
Yeah.
Oh, there it was.
Even with like a vodka soda, like that you get at the bar, like I think it's beneficial to give it that little bit of a stir. I know it seems a little bit like unnecessary, especially if you're getting like a cheap 1-in-1, but I like to go the extra mile and give my 1-in-1s a little bit of a. All right. So we are going to garnish our drink just super simply. Lemon wedge or wheel, whatever you got. A wheel?
I got a wheel.
Here you go. Same here. And usually you would drink this with a straw.
I don't like straws.
They're not great for the environment. So if you don't have one, that's fine. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, I did good on that.
Yeah?
Or you coached me good. I'm not sure
which.
Good.
I think you did good.
Yeah.
This is a solid build for a drink. It's basically boozy, bubbly lemonade. You can't really go wrong with that. So our next drink that is our next drink, we're going to use the sort of obscure glassware that I talked about at the end of the show, which is the Nick and Nora Glass. Here it is.
Nick and Nora Glass.
Oh yeah, you've got their picture. We got the same set. I already have their picture framed on my wall now because that's who I have the picture. I have pictures of fictional drinkers on my wall. That's how I roll.
But this one's Nick and this one's Nora.
Oh.
So
I didn't really think about it. Well, it's a very romantic glass. I didn't think about it that way until I got the little 2 set. I'm like, oh, there's a Nick and a Nora.
Yeah, you can't have Nick without Nora.
So, in The Thin Man, which is the movie where the characters Nick and Nora Charles are the leads, they drink martinis out of this little glass. And it was at the time it would have just been considered a modified coupe, but functionally it has a lot of advantages to the coupe. It's got those higher sides, which mean there's less surface area, so your drink stays colder longer. It's got this nice thin glass, so it chills really quickly. Like, I recommend keeping these in your freezer for when you're ready for them. And also, because it's smaller, it's just, you get kind of the right size drink. Like, you just got like a nice, cold, perfect pour from this.
They're a very classy glass.
Really, like
Classy.
This is the size that I like classic cocktails to be. Like, this is what I feel is appropriate. Now, in the movie, they specifically are drinking martinis out of these little glasses. And Nick has this whole dialogue about different, like, songs that you shake different cocktails to. And he says that the martini is shaken to the waltz. So that implies a shaken martini, which I've said my piece on. I prefer martinis stirred if they're going to be gin martinis, which at that time period, martinis would have been gin. This was before the popularity of vodka. But Nick has his martini shaken, so we're going to make a classic martini shaken in our Nick and Nora glass. We are going to
start us out, Maestro.
Well, now I would usually say you'd ice your glass first. So you'd let some ice sit in your glass while you're building your drink. Now, we had our glasses chilling in the fridge, so we don't need to do that. But I always recommend, if you're making martinis, starting with a chilled glass. It's like 10 out of 10. All right. So a classic martini isn't that different from the martinis you're probably used to making. You're dealing with gin and vermouth. The one ingredient that gets added in that we don't really include in modern day martinis is a little bit of orange bitters. So we're gonna do like 2 dashes of orange bitters in our shaker to begin with.
All right.
And now the proportion of an old school martini, I mean, martinis, if you go back to the origin, like, you find a lot of recipes that are 50-50 vermouth to gin. That's a very heavy pour vermouth. But at least they would have been 1 ounce of vermouth to 2 ounces of gin. So far from what we do nowadays, which is anywhere from a 1/4 ounce, maybe a 1/2 ounce of vermouth to 2 to 3 ounces of gin. So we've really reduced the proportion of vermouth over time, but to keep it classic, we're going to do an ounce of vermouth to our 2 ounces of gin. And once again, 2 ounces of gin.
And with Bombay, it's bombs away.
Load our shaker up with ice and
Yep.
shake it up.
Bring old Nick up the bat.
Straight it into our glassware. You can double strain your shaken martinis if you really want to avoid any further dilution. You don't want any of those pesky ice chips to get in there. These strainers that we're using, these Hawthorns, these are the ones from Cocktail Kingdom, and they have a really tight weave, so they catch all your ice chips. So these are really great if you don't want to double strain your cocktails, meaning you use one of these guys, a tea strainer, along with this. You can buy these. They are a little bit more pricey, but they do result in only needing one piece of equipment to double strain because they have a really tight weave.
Yeah, it works good even for an amateur like me.
Yeah.
That's a nice, cold, frosty-looking drink.
Right? Look how beautiful that is. Don't you just love that? Just cold, just slight cloudiness.
Yeah.
Now, the garnish here, I think this is like super traditionally, it would be a lemon twist, but the olive was also popular in a similar time period. And I believe in the movie they'd use olives. So I think you could go either way. I prefer a lemon twist with my classic martini. Dad, you have olives. Either is fine.
I'm going with olives. Mom, whenever she gets a martini, she always says, I want 4 olives with it. And it's like, look, this isn't a salad buffet. You're getting a drink.
Well, that's what I would maybe, if we're doing classic, I would maybe stick to like 1 olive. But I think if you want 4 olives in your martini, maybe you just want a dirty martini, or you want a snack, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's a snack. Anyway, I put 1 olive in mine because you said that's what's classic, and class is what I think of when I think of me. So
there you go. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's just so clean. It's a little, those orange bitters I think are just very forward here. It's very citrusy. It's got that like nice dry citrus note. I mean, mine is backed up with the lemon peel, but I think even with that little bit of salinity you've got, like saltiness is good for bringing out sweetness. And I think that's the power of that 1 olive is you get a little bit of sweetness there.
It's good and cold and refreshing.
Well, Dad, I think you have some glassware to tell us about as well.
Well, it's just that I went into the beer glass part, and while I don't have the complete array of every beer glass we talk about, I thought, well, let's take advantage of having video instead of me describing a glass, and just so that if people had any questions about it. So the first one that we talked about was the utility American pint, and that's it. It's just it's a thick glass, and they stack well on top of each other, so it's easy for bartenders to use. It does nothing to enhance the beer, but this is what you'll see in most of them.
From a bartender's perspective, if you don't want to spend the money on a cut crystal stirring glass, or if you work in a bar where that cut crystal stirring glass is going to get broken, pint glasses are great for stirring up drinks, stirred drinks. That's what I've used in almost all the bars I've worked at. We just keep a ready supply of pint glasses on hand that are designated for stirring.
All right. The next one is the Pilsner glass. So as you see, it's got that glass disc at the bottom and the thick base, and then the small outward tube, more or less. Next up, we have the Weizen glass. And this is a Weizen glass. As you see, it's a bigger glass, because usually a lot of your wheat beers are your lower alcohol beers. They're like 4 and 5%. So you get more.
Oh, so there's probably a mark on there to show you your headline, right?
No, I don't think so.
No, I was gonna say, because a lot of those glasses are bigger too, because they allow for a good 3-4 inches of head on them.
This is your tulip glass or your Belgian glass that we talked about. As you see, it's smaller, And this is actually from Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale. We went on a tour of that brewery and bought several of their glasses, and you see it's a much smaller glass, and it's usually because those are higher alcohol beers that are in there. They're like 8 to 12% usually.
Oh, Dad's
Now,
having himself a drink here. All right. Good
there
for
you go. This is actually a Kentucky Bourbon Barrel. Their beer is aged in bourbon barrels. This is their Blackberry Porter, and it's a very seasonal. They make just a little bit of it for just like one run every year, and you're lucky if you can get some, but we were able to snatch some and we got one. So I'm drinking it in the actual glass that they belong in.
Sometimes we call those gravity glasses, but yeah, they're for higher gravity, higher alcohol beers. You are drinking down that high volume beer. Oh, and now it's
Mostly gone. All right, well anyway, that's the tulip glass. Now, we talked about beer mugs. Those are just in general. Beer mugs sometimes are pretty big. It's usually big because they usually get the lower volume beers again. It's like 4 or 5%, maybe at the most. But it holds a lot. This is actually 2 full beers that I poured in here. And as you see, it's just barely over half full. So, bottoms up.
I was gonna be a little offended that you only took a sip of your martini and put it aside. I'm glad now.
Now, I saved for last my favorite beer glass. My favorite beer glass is the Imperial pint glass.
Ah,
and
there's your friend.
That's what the Guinness is in. So, you can't have a Guinness glass without having a Guinness. So I had to save that, and I had to pour it. I didn't want that one already in there because you have to see, you pour that part way up and then pour it down the middle.
Oh, wow. This isn't live for you all watching, but this is Dad trying to do a perfect Guinness pour. Did you get it?
But as you see, you get that brown foam forming down underneath there, and it all works together. And there is nothing better than a Guinness. And one thing you should know about the Guinness, and of course we're going to go into this in more detail next week, Guinness is the lightest beer that is not a light beer that is on the market. So cheers to Guinness. This is an early St. Patrick's Day gift.
Well, I was going to say, so, Dad, as Dad alluded to, next week we are going to make our video for St. Patrick's Day, so you have it before St. Patrick's Day. But we've mentioned Guinness a couple times on the podcast, but we're going to give you a whole Guinness. Dad's new as my co-host, and I know his favorite thing to drink is Guinness, so we're just going to make it a Guinness Palooza next week. Dad's going to just drink a lot of Guinness. I don't know if we're going to have a video that isn't just Dad just drinking Guinness in a green shirt.
See, it's got the nice foam still left in the glass there.
Well, there's your rundown of glassware and how quickly.
It's a little warm in here.
Yeah. That was like, there might be some surprises as I show off some glassware. I'm like, oh, maybe he invested in some cool kinds of glassware. Nope, he just filled what he had with beer. A lot of beer.
Hey, that's the best surprise I could ever have.
All right. Well, thank you, Dad, as always, for joining me here. We are Neat Boozecast on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to join our Patreon, we're on there. I have been Taylor Spurl.
I have been Tommy Smurl.
And this has been
Neat. See how fast they go down? That's why I got to order them 2 at a time. It's gone.
Watch you chug 3 beers. I suddenly feel okay about.
Or if you count the 2 in the one mug.
That's true. That was 2.